Good morning, everyone, and happy Halloween. MK Hobson here, coming at you via YouTube instead of live stream. My original intention had been to do a marathon reading of my new book, which launches today on Livestream. Unfortunately, however, Livestream has been knocked offline by Hurricane Sandy. It's been down all morning, and it really shows no signs of coming back up. So what I'm going to do is read an excerpt from my new book, which is The Warlock's Curse, which comes out today. I mean, really, it's been out for a while, but today is the official launch day. You know, you got to have an official launch day. And at the end of this video, I will also announce the winners of my Goodreads giveaway. I'm giving away 13 copies of The Warlock's Curse, and I have 13 lucky winners, and I'm going to announce who they are at the end of the reading. So, The Warlock's Curse is book 3 in my Veneficus Americana historical fantasy series. The first two books were The Native Star and the Hidden Goddess. The Native Star was nominated for a Nebula Award in 2010, which was really exciting. Both of those books are set in 1876, and they follow different main characters. This book begins a new duology. My series is kind of a series of duologies. And it follows two different characters, and it's set about 30 years in the future in 1910. So the main character of this book is Will Edwards. He's a very intelligent young man, kind of a gearhead, a scientist, and he has been accepted into a very prestigious apprenticeship program at Tesla Industries, which is located in Detroit. And just a word about Tesla. This would be Nikola Tesla. In my version of history, I've kind of rectified some historical, what I view as unfairnesses, I guess you'd say. So I've kind of given him a lot more success than he really had in real life. I've made him, incredibly rich. And I also gave him the Nobel Prize in 1909, which is kind of nifty because the actual historical person who won it was Marconi, and at any rate, it's kind of historically satisfying to give that particular Nobel Prize to Tesla instead. Anyway, that's kind of a side note. The excerpt I'm going to read is Will's, when he actually goes to Detroit. He takes the apprenticeship. There's a lot of stuff that happens before this because his father doesn't want him to go, and so he has to go through all sorts of trials and travails to actually get there. He's assisted by an old friend named Jenny Hansen, kind of a childhood friend, and together they cook up a scheme to get to Detroit, and so that Will can take the apprenticeship. And so the excerpt I'm going to read is from his first kind of arrival at Tesla Industries. And hopefully most of it will be self-explanatory. You can certainly ask me any questions in the comments. And I hope you will enjoy the excerpt, and I hope you will purchase a copy of the book. The trade paperback is available at a variety of locations, and I'll make sure to link to those in the YouTube. And also the ebook is available as well. So let's get on with the excerpt. This is from, I don't know which chapter it is. And there's going to be a place in the middle where I'm going to kind of skip a little bit just for the sake of compactness. Okay. So they're in Detroit. It was a short walk from the apartment building to Will's first glimpse of Fort Tesla, or at least of the heavy 15-foot-tall fence of black wrought iron that surrounded it. A neatly trimmed boxwood hedge was planted along the fence's inside perimeter, its dense evergreen foliage reaching to the top of the iron bars and confounding any attempt to see the buildings within. The compound covers a full 20 acres, said Greg, who is Will's mentor, as they walked along Sullivan Street toward the main iron gates, huge, ornate, rendered in a strikingly modern style. The design featured geometrically dissected circles, lightning bolts, and broadcasting towers, symbols of the technological advancements upon which Nikola Tesla had built one of the greatest fortunes of the new century. The gates were huge to allow for trucks to pass in and out of the compound, and face directly onto a long street. "That is Piquette Avenue," Griggs said, gesturing down the street. "There are many car factories down that way." As he was saying this, Will noticed a young man standing on the corner behind a hand-lettered sign propped up against a hydrant. Grigg added loudly, "And some lazy bums should go and bother them instead of us." The young man, being thus addressed, smiled slightly but said nothing. He was slender and wiry, dressed in an irregular assemblage of seemingly scavenged working man's clothes. He had coal-black hair and dark eyes. His sign read, "One Big Union," and featured a hand-drawn picture of an alarmed-looking black cat. "Mornin', Mr. Grigoriev." The young man spoke with a bright, brassy twang, eyeing Will. "Fresh meat for the grinder?" He tried to hand Will some literature, but Grigg slapped it out of his hand with a venomous curse and pushed Will along the sidewalk toward the gatehouse. "Damn Wobblies. That one has taken it upon himself to serve as our own personal social conscience. I don't know why he has decided to enlighten our little corner of the world, but Mr. Tesla despises him." At the gatehouse, Grigg exchanged some words with the gatekeeper, and then, less than 24 hours since he'd left California, Will was inside Fort Tesla. Inside the compound, space seemed to expand. The access roads and sidewalks, laid out with geometric exactitude, bisected fields of open parkland, dotted with trees. "I am sure I do not need to recite the history of Tesla Industries to you," Grigg began, as they walked briskly along a precisely angled pathway. "But the recital to our new apprentices has become second nature to me, so I beg your indulgence. I myself began with the original company, Tesla Electric Light and Manufacturing, when Mr. Tesla formed it in '86. It was his pioneering work in wireless broadcasting, developing the world wireless system, that secured his fortune and gave him the ability to build the model industrial compound you now stand within. To your left, you will see the Tesla phone manufacturing plant." Grigg gestured to the building as they passed it. It was very large, with small, high glass windows that sparkled in the bright morning light. The factory hummed with activity, and through the open doors of the building's large loading bay, Will could glimpse hundreds of factory workers in pristine white uniforms. Naturally, it is the closest building to the main gate, for it is kept in constant operation. Behind the plant, deeper within the enclosure, were many more tidy little buildings, neatly tucked in among the groomed parkland. Will's attention was captivated by one building in particular, which appeared to sit right in the very center of the compound, an appearance reinforced by the fact that a broad paved roadway ringed it like a moat, with smaller roadways radiating outward like spokes from a hub. "That is the executive building, where Mr. Tesla has his personal living quarters and laboratory," Grigg said. "A lovely building, is it not? It was done by Stanford White, designer of the famous Wardenclyffe Tower on Long Island, the first of the many thousands of Tesla towers across the United States that make up the world wireless system." Grigg ended the exposition with a curt wave of his hand. "You will likely never go in there." Grigg made a special point of indicating the apprentices' dormitories as they passed them, and his tone suggested that it was still a matter of some irritation that Will would not be living in them. "As I believe I have mentioned, all of the other apprentices live within the compound," he said, "and of course during the term of their apprenticeship, they are not allowed to venture outside these walls except under the most extraordinary of circumstances. But Mr. Tesla has arranged for the ample satisfaction of every wholesome need a young man could possibly have. We have a very good cafeteria, all vegetarian, of course. Mr. Tesla would no sooner allow dead animal flesh through the gates than he would a woman. Over there is the moving picture theater, no Edison films, as Mr. Tesla has no wish to further line the pockets of an unethical cad. You'll be pleased to learn, however, that Mr. Tesla has agreed to bend the rules for the new Dreadnought Stanton film. If he hadn't, our young men surely would have rioted. We have a lovely little Buddhist temple we use for our daily meditation exercises, and of course, we have a barber." Will gave Grigg's shaggy hair and stubbly cheek a reproachful look. "You could certainly do with a visit to the barber, Mr. Edwards." Finally, Grigg came to a stop before a long, low building set back from the sidewalk in a neatly trimmed bower of foliage. Affixed to the door was the number 3, rendered in bright, thin silver. "This is my building," said Grigg, "which is to say it has been given to my team for our exclusive use. Here you will be working." When they stepped inside, it was clear that this really was Grigg's building, for everyone greeted him with great deference, starting with a man Grigg introduced as Mr. Hahn, the department's secretary. "Good morning, Mr. Grigoriev," Mr. Hahn said, taking Grig's coat and showing Will where to hang his. "I will let legal know that you have arrived." Then Grig led Will into the main room of Building 3. And instantly, Will knew that despite every questionable thing he'd done to get to Detroit, lying to his parents, scheming with Jenny to get her inheritance, running away from Mr. Hanson, it had all been worth it. He'd made the right choice. Before him was the biggest, best-equipped physics lab he'd ever seen. There seemed to be literally acres of the most up-to-date advanced scientific equipment, and it all gleamed as if it had just been unwrapped. The lab in Building 3 made the lab in which Will had worked at the Polytechnic, even the lab at Berkeley, look like a couple of Cracker Barrel country stores compared to the Emporium on Market Street. A dozen young men were working at desks around the room. They were all very trim and neat, wearing freshly pressed suits beneath their rubber aprons and sleeve protectors. They all looked as if they took full advantage of the compound's barber on a regular basis. And while the workroom was enormous, all these young men occupied just one half of it. The other half held but one desk, several work tables, and an absolutely enormous machine that was clearly in an ongoing state of construction. Stopping before it, Grig laid a tender hand on its side. "This is my project," he said, stroking the machine's metal flank as if it were a living thing. "You will be primarily assisting me on my work with this. I haven't come up with a name for it." He peered at Will appraisingly. "Good at coming up with names, are you?" Will shrugged. "Never really tried it." He paused. "What does it do?" Grig smirked and laid a finger alongside his nose. "Doesn't do anything yet. It's what I hope it will do that's important. But if I start explaining that to you now, we'll never meet the rest of the apprentices." Briskly, Grig led Will from one desk to the next. All the other apprentices were much older than Will, some in their mid-20s even. This confirmed the rumor that Tesla Industries usually recruited college men for their apprenticeship program. Most welcomed Will with polite indifference. There was one really friendly greeting, and that came from a young man who Grig introduced as Mr. Courtenay. Mr. Courtenay had an exceptionally messy desk. It was stacked high with papers and dissertations and theses. Interspersed among these were several expensively framed pictures of Marie Curie. As the friendly young man pumped Will's hand, he said, "Quick, why is the sky blue?" Will knit his brow, taking a moment to try to grasp the relevance of the question. Was he trying to impress Marie Curie or something? Finally, Will shrugged. "Because it's not red?" "Critical opalescence," the young man said eagerly, digging into his pile of papers and withdrawing a dog-eared thesis. He shoved it into Will's hands. "I've just been reading up on it, and it's fascinating. Feel free to borrow anything else that catches your fancy. I'm happy to share." Mr. Courtenay, we call him Court, is a great appreciator of the work of Mr. Einstein, Grig commented as they left his desk and proceeded on their tour. Will clutched the bound document against his chest, overwhelmed but encouraged. His next encounter, however, was less encouraging. In fact, the young German to whom he was introduced, Mr. Roher, was downright hostile. "So, you are to be Grig's pet engineer." Roher did not bother to rise from his office chair or even take Will's outstretched hand. He was short and quite fat, and his face was so unpleasant that it made Will wonder if this was why Grig had asked if he were fat. Two unpleasant fat men in one department would certainly not be an ideal situation. "Max is a theoretical physicist, so naturally he looks down on us humble engineers," Grig chuckled. "It was not my intent to insult engineers, Mr. Grigoriev," Roher said, lifting an eyebrow. "Only pets." "Now, Max," Grig said with an indulgent sigh, "do try to be a little more accommodating. Mr. Edwards will be taking the desk next to yours, and it won't do to get off on the wrong foot." Rolling his eyes, Roher threw down his pen with pronounced annoyance. "Babysitting? Really?" "I believe you will find everything you need," Grig said to Will, ignoring Roher's outburst. "Anything you don't have, you can request from Mr. Hahn." He smirked. "Or you can always ask Mr. Roher, of course." "Don't bother asking me anything," said Roher, picking up his pen and glaring down at the papers he'd been working on. So I'm going to skip a tiny bit here. Clenching his teeth, Roher continued to pointedly ignore... Oh, no, excuse me. Clenching his teeth, Will continued to pointedly ignore Roher's barbs. He was growing unhappier with his assignment of deskmates by the moment. Then Mr. Hahn, Grig's secretary, came up behind them. "Mr. Grigoriev, legal just rang. They're ready for you to bring Mr. Edwards over." Grigg sighed. Paperwork. The bane of human existence. Come, Mr. Edwards, we shall make this quick. Emerging from Building 3, they discovered that it had grown colder and the sky was clotted with gathering snow clouds. Will was once again glad for the overcoat his mentor had lent him. They walked briskly to another building. It was not numbered. Instead, a sign by the front door read, in thin modern letters of chrome, Corporate Offices. After negotiating receptionists, assistants, and even an elevator, they arrived at a large corner office. The placard on the door read, George Jovanovic, Chief Counsel. The office's occupant was an older man, balding, with a round belly and skinny legs. He wore a very flashy vest, which did not surprise Will, for it was his experience that only balding men with round bellies and skinny legs, or lawyers, ever went in for vests like that. "Pleased to meet you, Mr. Edwards," said Jovanovic, shaking Will's hand heartily. Then he wagged a finger at Grigg. "Is it true you've already been showing him around Building 3? Before he's signed his paperwork? Tisk, tisk, Grigg." "Oh, for heaven's sakes, let's just get this over with," Grigg muttered, taking a seat. "Never were we so plagued by lawyers in the old days. We all have much more important things to do, Mr. Edwards included." "The formalities must be observed." The lawyer sounded hurt on behalf of the formalities, as if the formalities were a small kitten constantly being abused. Retrieving a freshly typed stack of papers from his desk, he slid on a pair of half-moon glasses and peered down at them. "Now, Mr. Edwards, we sent you the boilerplate apprenticeship contract with the acceptance letter, but given your irregular circumstances, we had to make a few adjustments." He looked at Will over the top of his glasses. "Am I to understand that you brought a wife with you?" Will nodded. Jovanovic's eyes lit with amusement as he touched a place on the page. "Good thing we took out the celibacy clause, then, isn't it?" "Celibacy clause," Will said. "It was all very clearly stated in the boilerplate we sent you," Jovanovic said, and Will's embarrassment burned afresh. "All interns must agree to remain pure and chaste for the term of their association with Tesla Industries. Mr. Tesla believes that by refraining from intimate physical congress, one can channel one's mental activities to a higher plane." Grigg stated all of this with textbook flatness. Meditation is also involved. "In any case, we have stricken that clause." Jovanovic smiled again. "I trust you will meditate just a little bit harder, Mr. Edwards, to make up the difference." Jovanovic turned over the sheaves to another place on the contract. "Another irregularity. As the result of your matrimonial state, arrangements have been made for you to live off the compound. I'm sure Grigg has told you how exceptional this is. I have revised the language surrounding punishments for leaving the compound, items of that nature, but I have also added some new language about not leaving the compound unless you are accompanied by Grigg. He will walk you to and from work every morning." Will looked at Grigg, raising his eyebrows. Grigg gave him a soothing smile, much as he had given Mr. Roher. "It is a peculiarity of Mr. Tesla's," he said mildly. "He fears for the mental purity and physical cleanliness of his workers, especially his apprentices, who are younger and more impressionable. He would like our program to be, well, he thinks of it rather like a monastery. A monastery of brilliant young minds, working toward the achievement of science's noblest aims." Will absorbed this. Finally, drawing a deep breath, he said, "Mr. Grigoriev, Mr. Jovanovic, I didn't come to Detroit to see the sights. I came to work and to learn. I swear to abide by any restriction." Both Grigg and Jovanovic seemed amply pleased by that response. Jovanovic, particularly, smiled even more broadly. "Well, that is the kind of attitude we like here at Tesla Industries. We needn't bother going through the rest of these changes then. It is good to know that you understand that we have your best interests at heart. So let's get these signed, and you and Grigg can get back to work." Retrieving the signature page from the end of the stack of papers, he laid it on top, then squared the papers neatly. Then he opened his desk drawer and withdrew something small, wrapped in a sanitary cardboard wrapper. From the wrapper, he extracted a small steel razor blade that glinted in the light. "You expect me to sign in blood?" Will wanted to be accommodating, but he could not keep the surprise from his voice. He was aware that many companies, especially old-fashioned ones that still trafficked in magic, required such a soul-binding signature on contracts of importance. But Will hardly expected it from a company with the kind of modern progressive reputation that Tesla Industries had. "I assure you Mr. Tesla would prefer that our contracts not be signed using bodily fluids, said Jovanovic, but it is a corporate necessity that I have prevailed upon him to accept. You may cut your finger yourself, or I can do it for you. I promise you I am quite good at it. Will remembered Jenny's admonitions. I think perhaps I should look these over, he said haltingly. May I sign them tomorrow? Grigg and Jovanovic exchanged glances. Jovanovic's cheerful demeanor clouded. We did send you the boilerplate with the acceptance letter, he said, and you did have ample time to review that, didn't you? Will gulped. Sure, of course, but the changes really are insubstantial, Jovanovic interjected curtly, and you have already seen the inside of Building 3. That is my fault, said Grigg. You mustn't hold Mr. Edwards responsible. Nonetheless, he has already seen more of Tesla Industries than Mr. Tesla would allow anyone to see without signing a non-disclosure agreement at the very least, Jovanovic pointed out. He sighed before adding, also, there is an additional complication. An additional complication? I don't know if Grigg has told you, but there have been urgent inquiries about you. Inquiries which give us very significant legal pause. Will's blood chilled. Inquiries? Your professor at the Polytechnic, Mr. Waters, telephoned me yesterday asking about you, Grigg hastily explained. Your people back home are demanding that you be returned to them immediately. It seems that not everyone is pleased about you taking this apprenticeship. Will flushed, humiliated. God damn it. He knew his parents were looking for him, but he hadn't imagined that they would contact Mr. Waters, contact Tesla Industries, suggest that he should be dragged home like a truant schoolboy playing hooky in the pool hall. It was just plain mortifying. I'm 18 years old. Indignation burned under Will's collar. I have every right to come here. My people back home don't have anything to say about it. Absolutely you do, Grigg said encouragingly. That's the spirit. By signing the contract, you empower us to respond to these inquiries on your behalf, should your parents decide to pursue the matter more forcefully, said Jovanovic. Once you formalize your legal relationship with Tesla Industries, we will handle everything. Fine, Will said, snatching the shining little razor blade. Jovanovic took out a dish and a bottle labeled Haycraft Leech Saliva, a substance that would allow the blood to flow as freely as regular ink. The lawyer put several drops from the bottle into the dish and passed it over the desk to Will. Will cut his finger and let the drops fall into the dish. Jovanovic gave Will a steel-nibbed pen. Will signed the contract. Once he was finished, the lawyer blew on his signature to dry it, then squared the papers. We'll have a copy certified for you, Mr. Edwards, he said. Then he went to his desk drawer and withdrew another small, glittering thing. He showed it to Will. It was a small pin, like a tie tack, enameled in black and red, with the lightning bolt design that featured so prominently in all of Tesla Industries' designs. Your Tesla Industries identification badge. The lawyer pinned this to Will's lapel, smoothed the fabric. Take care with that, Mr. Edwards. It's a mark of distinction. Then he dusted his hands and looked at Grigg. He's all yours. Excellent, Grigg said, beaming. Let's get to work. And that is the end of that excerpt. And to be quite honest, having read that, just that much, I honestly don't know how I would have survived reading the whole book. So maybe it's really, good that Livestream went down. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. And I am now going to grab my list of Goodreads winners here. See, it says Goodreads winners, except they'll probably be reversed because somehow this camera does everything in reverse. We had 924 entries to this giveaway, almost 1,000 people. I was really impressed by that. It's more than any giveaway I've ever done. And so the winners are, without further ado, and you will all be receiving your books very soon. Actually, I have another shipment of books coming that I need to get before I can send these out, but I will send them as soon as I can. The winners are, from Arlington, Texas, Kelly Powell. From Westminster, Colorado, Allison Miller. From Brunswick, Georgia, Robert Barney. From the city of Bristol in Great Britain, Abby Mounter. Grove City, Ohio, Melissa Willard. From Carson City, Nevada, Tiffany Parker. From Rustburg, Virginia, Heather Mays. From Coquille, Oregon. Yay! Coquille, Oregon. Beautiful place. Misty Dawn Thrash. From West Chicago, Illinois, Ilsa Briseno. From Poplar Bluff, Missouri, Vera Humphrey. From Mount Airy, North Carolina, Ammon Piat. From Youngstown, Ohio, Marie Finnessy. And from North Quincy, which would be Massachusetts, of course, Jacqueline Bryson. And that's it. Those are the 13 winners. You will all be receiving your books in the mail. And thank you all for watching my little YouTube video here. Again, sorry about the technical difficulties with Livestream, but hopefully you got a little taste of the book. And I hope you will all maybe grab a copy if you liked the excerpt. And if you're in Portland this weekend, I hope to see some of you at Oricon. We're doing our big launch party at 7 p.m. on Saturday, November 3rd, Suite 1450. So come on up. We're doing an old-fashioned soda fountain. It's going to be, there's no alcohol, so it's all ages, and there's going to be all sorts of treats and excitement. So that's it for today. Have a happy, wonderful, safe Halloween, everybody. I hope you're all having fun. I hope everyone on the East Coast is safe and warm and dry. And I will talk again to you, hopefully, very soon. Bye!